Hi, my name is Jessica and I'm an alcoholic. I've been through this process with the help of God, a couple steps study sponsors, and meetings like this. I've completed my formal amends and I work the latter steps to the best of my willingness. Thank you, Eduardo, for asking me to come here today. So, step one. It's funny. So I was just walking with a friend of mine and we were talking about this a little bit, and I was thinking about this when we were walking. Like when I came to my first AA meeting when I was 16 years old. Not because I wanted to, but because one of the girls that I ran with would do like the spin dry detox situation, and she came back and she was like, "Jess, you just need to let go and let God." And I was like, dude, I don't know what kind of brainwashing's going on at these programs you're going to, but it's terrible every time you come back. And she's like, "I need you to drive me to a meeting. I need you to come with me. I can't go alone." I was like, "Well, we all know you're an alcoholic, so I'll be happy to bring you." So I felt like I was like on a field trip doing a favor for a friend, you know? And like she sat up front and cried, and they passed a big book around and wrote all their numbers in it and gave it to her and were hugging her. And I sat in the back and judged and was like, "Can we go now?" And, you know, the thing is, when I sat in that meeting, it ruined my drinking at that age, because it planted that seed of doubt. Because I realized that I think about drinking all the time at 16 years old. Like I first started drinking like all the kids I grew up with. Like we would all steal booze from our parents before the Catholic school dances, pour it all in a 7-Up bottle, shake it up and drink it with like a Pepsi chaser. It was disgusting. I mean, I remember drinking in the church that I grew up in a church just like this in Boston, and we would all drink in the church parking lot like Scotch whiskey with a Pepsi chaser. It was disgusting. But I didn't care because I loved that burn. I loved how it made me feel. Like, look at all these people I'm now instant friends with. Like, this is going to be great. We're going to get wrecked and it's going to be a good time. And I chased that feeling throughout the whole time. Like, I just wanted to have a good time all the time. And like, I want to be happy 99.999% of the time. That's never changed for me. And I thought like booze and drugs was going to do that for me, you know? And so that's how it started, was like drinking in church parking lots before Catholic school dances. And that was like the highlight of my month, you know, like every time there was a dance, it was like, woo, getting trashed. And like, then it became an obsession for me, because then I became like, instead of focusing on schoolwork, like I was like the official keg party planner. So like I'd be in school, like figuring out where I'm going to get booze and where, you know, and where we're going to drink it and how we're going to sneak out. And it was, you know, like seemed normal because we were all doing it. But the difference between like me and some of the other kids is like they were focusing on their schoolwork and I couldn't. You know, I was like a dog with a bone. All I cared about was when I was getting to drink again. And so I like drank and smoked weed, which didn't seem like a big deal. And then at like 15, I fell in love, which seems terrifying now that I have daughters. At like 15, I was hanging with these kids, but this kid was doing these new drugs I'd never heard of. And all I knew is that like they would pick me up from school. This kid and his friend would pick me up from school, and then they would drop me off at my house, and then they would leave and then come back, and I wasn't like allowed to go with them, and I felt left out. It's that immediate fear of missing out. Like, what are you doing that I can't come? Why don't you like me? I want to be a part of too. And like, I would just push and push and push to be able to come. And finally the best friend was like, fine, whatever, just let her come. And they were driving to Charlestown to get OxyContin, and then I had no idea what it was. I just wanted to be a part of. So I went from like drinking and smoking weed to being a strung out junkie in like a month. Like, it was so fast because they were daily users. So I became a daily user, and my life became unmanageable so fast. I mean, I was like an unrecognizable human within 30 days. And it no longer was about like getting drunk before a dance. Like, now it was like a need to live. And I had to keep up this facade that like I could drink and party with my friends, even though I got violently ill when I would drink on opiates. So this is like how I started to realize it was a problem. It's like, it wasn't even like what I was doing. It was the fact that like I had my normal drinking friends on the weekends and they didn't know I was doing opiates. So I would do the opiates during the day and then go out with the drinking friends at night, knowing I would be violently ill drinking on the opiates. And if I did the coke that the drinking friends had, I'd be now speedballing, but I didn't care because I wanted the drinking friends to like me. It was that like need to belong, need to fit in. And I didn't want them to know what I was doing with the boyfriend because I didn't want them to not like the boyfriend. So it's like this whole crazy banana head situation I created, and so sick, so ill, like it was insane. And I was going to kill myself living like that. And it didn't become real until one of the girls that I was running with did die. Like she overdosed doing that speedballing situation. And that was real traumatic at 16 to like lose. Like I started losing friends a lot. Like I grew up in Boston. Like there was a lot of us that hung out together. Like people started like overdosing left, right, and center. And it became real really fast. It was no longer like this is a fun thing to do. This is like life or death. But I thought like you might die because you don't know what you're doing, but I know what I'm doing. So I started going to AA with my friend, but I felt like the driver. Like out of the four of us, like the one girl was crazy. She's the one that overdosed. The other girl was like, she was a daily user, and when she drank, she was like that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde drinker. Like she'd be the one like smashing a tequila bottle and holding it to her neck at a party with 500 people, and I'd be like, dude, why are you ruining the vibe? Like just relax. You're ruining it for the rest of us. Like stop being so crazy. Don't drink tequila. It doesn't work for you. You know, and then like the other one was like a happy drunk but trashed, and like I would have to babysit her and make sure she didn't go home with someone, and I drove. And so I felt like I had my shit together and they didn't. And they just needed to learn how to drink properly, and I just needed to learn how to like stop like doing the drugs, which was hard to do. And so I would go to like, we went to NA, AA, Rational Recovery. I was in an opioid clinic thing. I was doing all the things. But the reality was like, and this is what we were talking about, we were walking this morning, like I just wasn't willing, right? I wouldn't admit, I didn't understand what it meant to be powerless. And it talks about in here, like right in the beginning, like it talks about like that transmission line from one alcoholic to another. And that's eventually how I got in here. Is like people just kept talking to me and ruining my drinking because I could identify, right? Like I could understand, like they would talk about like this allergy, like this idea of an allergy interested me because I thought that I was just a bad kid. I thought that I could control it, right? I thought that I just wasn't trying hard enough. I didn't understand that like I have a disease that centers in the mind and I have a physical allergy. And it started with booze and drugs, but really like my brain is so broken that it can be anything. Like it can be booze, it can be drugs, it can be Oreos. Like it can be shopping. It doesn't matter. I have this like obsessive mind. And like nothing's going to stop that but a higher power. Like I have to be willing to have that concept of a higher power. And you know, in this part of like in this doctor's opinion, like they talk about like the action of the alcoholic on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. That phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Like I have 3 sisters and we're all heavy drinkers, period. But like they can stop and go to work on Monday and they all have huge jobs. All 3 of them are like super big jobs, super successful people. And I couldn't do it. Like I could barely hold down a waitressing job at the Corb, which I didn't have to roll into till 1. Because like I have that allergy. So like I wake up in the morning and I'm not thinking about like work. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do so that I can be numb for the rest of the day. So I can shut off my brain. And I can't think about anything else because I have that allergy. And once I start thinking about that, like it's like a runaway train. Nothing is going to stop that. Like nobody's going to stop me except for God. Like I have to be willing to go to a higher power. And that was really hard to like hear when I came in here and like people would tell me that and I'd be like, that's not a solution that's going to work for me. Like, I don't know what I thought was going to work. I thought you were going to chain me to a seat. Like, that would work. I don't know. Like, but that didn't feel like a tangible solution. And it talks here, like, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. They're talking about that before we even get to the number of pages. It also wasn't interesting to me. Like, that didn't feel like it was going to work for me. You know, and it says here, like, we found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. And so basically that's like how I ended up getting sober, is like these women that were a part of this altruistic movement, like freely giving of themselves. That's what I was told that meant. Like, they gave so much of their time to me and like dragged me around until I wanted to come myself and take care of myself and get this solution. And I'm so grateful for that, because not everybody gets that experience. Like, my best friend talks about that all the time. Like, we came in at the same time, and like Pauline like scooped me up and brought me in with her ladies and then stalked me for the next like 3 months. And it was long enough that like I was like willing to like participate after the 3 months of her like dragging me 5 days a week minimum to meetings. But she didn't have that experience. My friend didn't have that experience. She didn't get a sponsor like that. So like nobody was chasing her. She had to do it all on her own willpower. And it was a really different experience for her. And if it was like that for me, I probably wouldn't be sitting in these halls today, honestly. Because I didn't get that I was powerless. Like, I thought I could control my drinking and just stop doing drugs. I really believed that to my core, and I would yes you to death about whatever you were telling me. But really, to my core, I believed that I could control this, you know. And it wasn't until the like last time I drank that I finally realized, like, oh my God, this is what being powerless means. Like, I had almost a year of sobriety, and it was like the normal, like, I had a home group, I had a job in the group, I had a sponsor, I went on commitments, I had a step group I belonged to. I went to literally a meeting every day, and my life was revolving around AA. I was doing all the good girl things, and it just, like, I was faking it till I made it. So I was like getting on my knees and reciting prayers that a sponsor had written on an index card for me. But, I had that phenomenon of craving, and instead of like going to God or picking up the phone, like I made a decision. Like, I was going to this Christmas party. I'd gone to this meeting on a Tuesday night, this woman's meeting I went to, and they gave me all the tools for success to avoid this Christmas party. I volunteered to drive a kid to Connecticut. I wouldn't even be in the state. I drove like 180 miles an hour, like there and back, so that I would make it back in time, and like they had me, I made a plan with a girl that was sober, that was supposed to come over my apartment, and I was supposed to call my sponsor and check in at a certain time, and I was supposed to, get on my knees and ask for help and do all these things. And I had like 11 months of sobriety at this point. And, I made that decision. Like, I had that reservation to drink, and I wanted to drink on my 20th birthday. And so I drove, I went to that party, and, I still was like doing that crazy thing we do where you're like, I'm going to go, but I'm not going to drink, but I just want to be there. Like, you lie to yourself like crazy. Like, it's crazy, the stories I would tell myself. It was so insane. Like, and I got there and I was like, I'm not going to drink. And someone offered me a beer, and I was like, I'm definitely not drinking a beer. Like, that's not what I'm going to choose to relapse on. And then like someone offered me a glass of wine, no thanks. And someone offered me a Madras, and I was like, oh, it's my drink. Like, no one's going to know. No one from AA is here. I ditched the sober girl. I shut my phone off so I couldn't I called my sponsor, left her a voicemail, and then shut off my phone. And then I had that one drink, and I don't know what happened. I mean, it went from like one drink at this really nice Christmas party on State Street to like 3 days later sitting in Brookline Tuesday night feeling like a piece of shit, wondering what happened. I lost my car, it got towed. I don't know who took me home. And there were no drugs involved. It was only booze. I couldn't blame it on the drugs. And I sat in that meeting on Brookline Tuesday night, And I was like awful. Like every time I was a chronic relapser, and I would never tell my sponsor, like I would tell her by going up and getting a chip. And so at this point, I had almost a year of sobriety. Like we were planning me chairing my 1-year anniversary. And we're sitting together at the meeting. I said nothing and just went up and got a chip. And she was like, what happened? You know, like how did we get to this place? We had all these plans. You know, she was like dumbfounded. I was doing all the good girl things. But I didn't believe that a higher power was going to keep me sober. And I didn't believe that I was powerless over this disease. And I wasn't willing. Like, I had a reservation. And it's baffling when it happens. You know, I've done it myself, and I've sponsored a lot of women where it's happened. And it's like, this is such a powerful disease that centers in my mind that can only be arrested one day at a time with the help of a higher power, period. And you know, I sat in that meeting and just thought to myself, this is what they're talking about when they talk about being powerless. Like, I can't have one drink in safety because I don't know what's going to happen. I just don't. And I felt so sad because I felt like that whole thing of self-pity. I guess I'll never be able to drink at my wedding. I'll never have a legal drink because I was only 20. I felt so sad. I was sitting in Brookline Tuesday night crying for myself. Like, I'll never have a champagne toast at my wedding. I didn't even have a boyfriend. And, you know, but that was that moment when I had that psychic change, right? Like that light switch flipped. Like, oh my God, I can't do this on my own. And whatever I'm doing is not working. You know, and I was finally willing to be like, I guess I have to believe in something else, you know. And what a humbling experience that was. And, you know, I hope, God willing, I never forget it because, you know, I've been sober a few 24 hours now, and those two other girls, like, both got sober around the same time. And one girl went out at 9 years, and one girl's been in and out for 15 years. She's overdosed like 9 times, and like a year ago she decided to start socially drinking. They're both socially drinking now. And it's like, you know, I said to my husband like a couple of years ago, I was like, you know, maybe my dad was right. Like when my dad was dying, he said to me, like this was like 10 years ago he died. When he was dying, he's like, you know, you're not an alcoholic. I was like, I don't know, 7 years sober at the time. You're not an alcoholic. You were just a really effed up kid and you hung with the wrong people. Like my dad was an alcoholic, you're not. That messed me up for like 2 years after that. And I had like 6 or 7 years of sobriety. And that was like, maybe he's right. I was so young, you know, and like, I remember talking to my husband about it and being like, you know, I was really thinking about it. And I said to my husband, like, how would you feel like if I, like, when I went to like work parties, had a glass of wine, but then like, that's it. And he was like, babe, you may not be an alcoholic. He's like, but I'm a vicious drunk and I can't be with someone that socially drinks. That's not going to work for me. So you can choose to go have a glass of wine at cocktail parties, but you're choosing to not live here anymore with me and the kids. And I was like, whoa, that feels dramatic. And he's like, I end up in prison when I drink. Like, that's the reality. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I guess I can't drink socially at cocktail parties then. And so like, that was the end of it, you know? And like, it's hard. Like those 2 other girls, like they socially drink now and like everything seems to be fine. But the difference for me is like, because I don't drink today, like I get to live this totally different life where I am part of this altruistic movement today. I get to freely give of myself all the time. And that's better than any high I ever had out there on the street, let me tell you. You know, you can't get that in a cup. And so today, like, maybe I'm not an alcoholic, who knows? Or I could just have an alcoholic mind that tells me I'm not an alcoholic. But I'll tell you, I can't have Oreos in my house, so that's like a pretty good sign that I might have a disease that centers in my mind. But every once in a while, like I have that thinking, and I do this work. You know, it's never going to go away from me. It talks about it in this reading, like it's never It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently been eradicated. Like, that's it. It's never going to fully go away. I'm never going to be cured. And I just have to remember, like, I'm powerless and stop trying to control everything. Like, I love to run the show. I feel like I'm an excellent director. I'm not. And I think I'm good at controlling everything. I'm not. And I just have to keep that up front, like, on a daily basis, that, like, I can't control anything. I need a higher power to help me. And, like, that transmission line from one alcoholic to another is what saved my life. And I need to give that back today to help the people that walk into these halls. Like, that's my job today, to give back what was freely given to me. And those women gave me so much of their time. I'll never be able to repay that. So if you're thinking about doing this process, you're new to the halls, you've been here for 30 years and you're suffering in these halls, like, find the people that are doing this work and that are living it, and find out what they're doing, you know? And I wish you all a day of sobriety. Thanks.